macroeconomics, and now we study econometrics. So maybe you could ask yourself, what are the difference among these subjects? So here I give you an example so that you can have a brief idea of the difference among these subjects. For example, we want to analyze the relationship between income and consumption expenditures of households, right? So that means here we have two variables, income and consumption expenditures. So in statistics, normally we just care about if these two variables has relationship or not. If yes, what kinds of relationship, like positive or negative? So how we can see the relationship of these two variables? So one of the first methods is to draw the graph. Okay, so the graph, in the graph, the consumption expenditures is the vertical axis, and income is the horizontal axis. And the graph, if the graph is upward sloping, it means that income and consumption expenditures has a positive relationship. That means when income increase, the consumption expenditure will increase. But in the case, if the graph is downward sloping, so it means that income and consumption expenditures has the opposite direction, go in the opposite direction, or has a negative relationship. In other words, when income increase, the consumption expenditures decrease. So here in statistics, we normally just care about the relationship between variables. And one of the methods to see the relationship is to graph or to calculate the correlation coefficients, right? But in economics, for example, in microeconomics, normally, okay, if we know that income and consumption expenditure go in the same direction or has a positive relationship, so normally we explain like this: an increase in income will raise consumption expenditures, other things be equal. So we have a terms here, other things being equal. What it means? It means that according to economists, besides income, there are many other factors that can affect consumption expenditures. But when we just care about the relationship between income and consumption expenditure, that means in this case we just calculate the marginal effect of income on consumption expenditures, and we keep the other thing fixed. So that means you have to calculate the first derivative of income regarding consumption expenditures. That means we have to calculate the marginal effect of income on consumption expenditures, and we need to keep the other things be equal. So that means according to economics, besides income, there are many other factors that can affect consumption expenditures. And if we just care about the effect of income on consumption expenditure, we have to keep the other thing fixed, okay, or be equal. But in econometrics, we want to know more in particular. We want to quantify to know lượng hóa. We want to quantify this relationship. We want to know if income and consumption has positive relationship, so one unit increase in income will increase how much or how many units of consumption expenditures. So we want to find out this number 0.7, for example, in this case. So that means in econometrics we want to quantify this relationship. Yeah. So you can see that for first to analyze the relationship between two variables, income and consumption expenditure. But in statistics, in economics, in microeconomics, for example, or in econometrics, we have a difference, how to say, propose. Okay, and so this is definition of econometrics. So the definition here is very general. So econometrics is based on the development of statistical methods for estimating economic relationship, testing economic theories, evaluating government and business policies. So you can see that econometrics is based on the development of statistics methods. So that's why last time I asked you to review like some methods for testing hypotheses or like methods for estimating some indicators you already study in statistics. And here, as what is econometrics for? So, in other words, the econometrics. So we use econometrics model in the case we want to quantify the relationship among economics variables, or we want to test the economic theory. Okay? For example, when you study some subjects like macroeconomics, microeconomics, and the other subjects, okay, and we study many theories in that subjects, and you want to test these theories in the real life with the data of the real life. We want to see if that theory can stand in the real life or not. And so what you have to do, you need to collect the data, and then you need to use the econometrics model to analyze the data. So that means we use the econometrics model to test the economic theories. And then you
Em thưa cô xem điểm danh vừa nãy đầu giờ em chỉ kịp join Zoom, xong rồi em ở ngoài em chưa kịp vào.
ai vậy em?
Xong Tùng.
Mai Tùng cho cô luôn cái số điện thoại của em ấy. Trong trường hợp mà cô có việc gì gấp cần báo cho lớp thì cô gọi điện cho em cho
em đọc 085 7953 958. Dạ vâng.
0857 à?
Dạ vâng.
953 958.
Dạ.
Vâng, cảm ơn em. Okay, so and then we the first purpose here we can use econometrics model to evaluate in the case we want to evaluate the impact of a change in one variable on other variable. So I mean, in fact, this is we want to quantify the relationship among economics variable. The proposed the first proposed and the first proposed more or less the same. And then the last one is policy recommendation. That means based on the estimated results, we can provide the policy recommendation. That means we can provide policy suggestion based on the evidence we have from the estimated results. Okay, So like last time when we talk about the outcome, the expected outcome of the course, right? So in fact, like after the course, we need to know, we have to know, or we will know how to set up an econometrics model to analyze the relative among economics variable, and we know how to estimate the coefficient, estimate the model. And based on the estimated results, we can provide the policy successions. Because you are now students, we are not like in high school or secondary school. So when we study like that's why the last purpose is policy recommendation. Because why? Because later on when you go to work, so for example, the the boss says that okay, I want your group, like you work in group, that you need to make a survey of the market to see which factor affecting the test or the choice, the behavioral choice of consumers, like a kinds of products of the company, something like this. You need to make the survey. So based on the survey, you get data, you get information. And based on the information, based on the data, so you need to provide the policy recommendation or the solution to, for example, to attract more consumers, something like this. So the point is that when you want to provide any solution, any policy, you need to base on the evidence. So evidence here is what? Is data, is information. So that's why when you go to work, and now people say that when you have information, that means you have money. So sometimes people evaluate information is like very important information or data. So based on when you have exact information, exact data, okay, so you can have like exact solution or policy. So that's why it's not like when we study in high school or secondary school when we solve a mathematics exercise. We just need to have some number. But now when we are students, we study in the university, so we need to study based on the data we have. So what it means? What can we do with that kind of data? So what we have to do? Okay, so this is the most, the last purpose and also the most important purpose when we analyze the data. We analyze data is not just for fun, just have some numbers, just keep like that. No, based on the number, we need to have some like idea, some solution or policy, something like this. So, and so this slide here, this slide provides like steps we need to carry out when we want to apply econometrics model in analysis. This slide is very important, so you should highlight this slide. If anybody here already print out the lecture, you should highlight this slide because we have to come back to this slide many times. When we finish the course, that means you already master all these steps. It's from step 1 to step 9. Step 9 forecasting. Step 9 you can choose to do or not. It doesn't matter. But from step 1 to step 8, you need to do. You have to do when we want to for analysis. Forecasting, I will talk to you about I will talk to you later about this step. We can do or you don't want to do, it's okay. It's fine. In step 6 here, I highlight this red color because why? When we finish step 5, we we don't move directly to step 6. We move to study step 7 to test hypothesis. Because why? Because if we don't understand the step 7, how to test the hypothesis, what is meaning of testing hypothesis, we cannot understand the consequence of the moral problems in step 6. So that's why if you want to understand step 6, you need to understand step 7. So that's why during the course, I have to talk to you step 7 first before discussing step 6. But after understanding all the steps, when you do the assignments or when you do like research papers or thesis, if you want to apply econometrics model, you need to follow like all the steps in order. Okay, all the steps in order. But when we study, that means when we don't know anything. So I need to talk to you like step 7 first, so you can understand the consequence of step 6. Yeah. And when during the course, each time when we finish any, important step, I will come back. I will talk to you that okay, we already finished steps 5 or step 6 or step 7. So, and when we in the class like 12 or 13, when we nearly almost finished the course, so you have to do the assignment. And when you do the assignment, you need to follow all the steps to write your assignment. But when you do a research paper, for example, like when you want to join the contest, like research for students, something like that, sinh viên nghiên cứu khoa học đúng không? So when you want to write a research paper, the way we write a research paper is different from the way we write an assignment for the subjects. So I will talk about this thing to you later. Yeah. So now I just give you like some very brief idea of each step. Okay. So if you don't understand or some points, so it is okay now. Step 1. Step 1, question of interest based on economic theories. In step 1, you need to define the topics of the research. That means you need to define what you want to do, what you want to analyze. For example, when you do the assignments in group, right, you need to discuss, okay, what you want to analyze, what topics we want to analyze, want to do. So, so the topics, the idea of the topics comes from the what you have studied in other course. Like you already studied microeconomics, and many other courses you already study. So in this course, you study many economic theories, and now you want to test that theories in real life when you can collect the data. Okay, or the idea of the topic can come from the social experience or the observation. For example, you want to analyze factors affecting GPA, the GPA of students of the university, something like this. Or you want to study like factor affecting the behavior of consumer of like a certain products, something like this. So That means any topics, any interest, any topics you want to study. For example, in microeconomics, you study the theories of Keynes. Keynes is a very famous English economist, and hundreds of years ago, when he observed the households in England, he had a statement like this: the consumption of households has a positive relationship with their income, right? So now you want to test these theories in the present time and in the case of Vietnam. You want to see if this theory is still right in the case of Vietnam at present time. So what you have to do? You need to collect the data on consumption and on income of households in Vietnam, for example, in the year 2020. Okay, so and then you realize the relationship of these two variables, and so we can see if the statement of Keynes is still right or not. Okay, so that means here as a first step we already can define our topics. Okay. Our topic is to analyze the relationship between consumption and income of households. Or in other words, we want to test this hypothesis. The hypothesis is that the consumption of households has a positive relationship with the income, and we want to test this hypothesis. And in step 2, we set up mathematics model. In step 2, we set up a mathematics model, and in step 3, we set up econometrics model. Here, I introduce to you both mathematics model and econometrics model to see the difference between these two models. But when after the course, when you already master all the steps, you can skip step 2. But now I introduce to you step 2, mathematics model, because I want you to see the difference between mathematics model and econometrics model. Okay, so here, this is the mathematics model. The mathematics model reflects the exact relationship between consumption and income. So here the consumption is dependent variable and income is independent variable. Okay, and this model is a mathematics model because it reflects exact the relationship between these two variables. That means consumption depends on the income, thus only on income. And so here you have to remember like some terms you already study, you already know, right? Beta 0, beta 1 here are parameters or coefficients. Parameter người ta gọi là tham số, coefficient người ta gọi là hệ số, em nhé. Beta 0 constant or intercept parameters. Beta 0 là tham số chẵn và tham số cố định. Beta 1 là slope parameter, tham số góc, hệ số góc. Đó, những cái từ này em phải nhớ, chúng ta sẽ đọc rất là nhiều. now we step 3 set up econometrics model. So econometrics model as the mathematics model reflects the exact similarity between two variable consumption and income. But besides the but according to the econometricians, besides income, there are many other factors that can affect consumption of households. Besides income, there are many other factors that can affect consumption of households. But because of some reasons, we do not include them in the model. But it doesn't mean that they do not exist. So that means we, according to the econometrician, we cannot set up a exact model or set up a mathematics model reflect exact relationship between income and consumption, because in fact it's not like that. Because consumption depends not only on income but on the other factors, or in other words, besides income, there are many other factors could affect consumption. So when we set up a model, we need to how to consider the existence of the other factors besides income. Okay, so for example, can you name some other factors besides income that can affect consumption? Các bạn thử nói thôi những yếu tố nào có thể ảnh hưởng đến cái chi tiêu các hộ gia đình ngoài thu nhập. Can you name some factors?
Ví dụ như là hàng hóa được sale, có đúng không?
Gì em?
Ví dụ như là hàng hóa được sale ấy, có đúng không?
Hàng hóa nghĩa là tên của nó phải có một cái tên cụ thể. Hàng tiêu dùng, ví dụ như là có thể là Consumer Index, CPI, chỉ số hàng hóa đấy, đó chính là cái thực ra thì như em nói thì, nhưng mà các em hình dung này là chúng ta muốn đưa một cái biến số nào vào mô hình là chúng ta phải có một cái thể hiện được dạng số cụ thể. Đấy. Thì ví dụ như bây giờ bạn ý tưởng là những cái hàng hóa mà được bán, đúng không? Đấy, thế thì dẫn đến là về những cái con số nào thể hiện cái điều đấy được? Các em phải chú ý nhé. Buổi trước chúng ta nói là biến số random variable. Biến số nó phải thể hiện dạng số, giá trị phải thể hiện dạng số. Đó. Thế thì bây giờ ví dụ bây giờ nhá. Bây giờ chúng ta có này. Chúng ta có consumption, chi tiêu của các hộ gia đình, đúng không? Consumption là biến phụ thuộc này của các hộ gia đình, đúng không ạ? Đấy, xong rồi có income, đúng không? Giả định bây giờ chúng ta hộ gia đình đây, chúng ta thấy 1, 2, 3, 4 chấm nhá, chấm chúng ta có 200 hộ gia đình, chúng ta điều tra được 200 hộ gia đình. Đấy, như vậy bên cạnh thì chi tiêu, thu nhập ảnh hưởng đến chi tiêu, thì còn có những cái ví dụ em vừa nói là hàng hóa mà được bán ấy, nhưng mà chúng ta phải có tên nó cụ thể là biến là gì, và phải có số nó được thể hiện, giá trị của nó được thể hiện như thế nào. Đấy. Thì cái này rất là quan trọng các em chú nhé. Ví dụ như bây giờ chúng ta muốn đang phân tích về cái environmental pollution affects the GDP growth of countries, for example, in the world. Thế thì bây giờ cái ví dụ như về environmental pollution, ô nhiễm môi trường, có cái biến số thể hiện ô nhiễm môi trường. Thế thì cái gì có thể hiện cái chỉ số nào, hoặc là làm sao để có thể đo đạc được dưới dạng số một cái vấn đề về ô nhiễm môi trường? Đấy, thì các em chúng ta phải đọc lý thuyết để xem trên thế giới để nói về ô nhiễm môi trường người ta dùng những cái thông số gì để phản ánh được cái sự ô nhiễm môi trường ở một quốc gia. Đó, thế nên từ cái việc mà các em có một cái ý tưởng trong đầu đến cái việc mà các em thực sự biến nó thành các biến số có các giá trị, có ý nghĩa, đưa được vào mô hình là cả một quá trình rất là khó. Đấy, và khó không chỉ đối với sinh viên các em mới học môn học này, mà khó đối với cả bản thân cá nhân cô, khó với cả những cái người làm nghiên cứu rất nhiều năm. Đấy, bởi vì nó đòi hỏi rằng là thứ nhất ý, là các em phải tìm được một cái thang đo chính xác. Thì thứ hai nữa là các em phải có nguồn dữ liệu. Đấy, rất nhiều người là đã sử dụng cái thang đo không chính xác, dẫn đến là kết quả là kết quả mô hình là không chính xác. Ví dụ như bây giờ thang đo ở đây có nghĩa là gì? Người ta gọi là cái measurements đấy, cái đấy rất là quan trọng. Ví dụ bây giờ chúng ta đang nói về cái chỉ số phát triển cơ sở hạ tầng nhá, đúng không? Infrastructure development, nó ảnh hưởng thế nào đến tăng trưởng GDP của một quốc gia. Thế thì cái gì thể phản ánh được cái infrastructure development? Thì cái đấy người ta gọi là cái measurements, cái thang đo. Thế thì bây giờ chúng ta phải đi tìm hiểu xem những cái chỉ số là thang đo nào có thể phản ánh được cái sự phát triển về cơ sở hạ tầng. Rất khó đúng không? Thực sự là rất là khó. Đấy. Rồi hoặc là những cái bây giờ chúng ta muốn nói về vấn đề về trình độ học vấn của một quốc gia, hoặc là trình độ phát triển, hoặc là về công nghệ của một quốc gia. Thế thì cái thước đo nào, thang đo nào phản ánh được cái điều đấy của một quốc gia? Cái đấy rất là khó. Cái measurements thì cực kỳ khó. Đấy. Thế thì đấy là nhân tiện nói thêm nhá, để các em hình dung được cái câu chuyện. Thế bây giờ bên cạnh cái income này, cái gì ảnh hưởng đến consumption của hộ gia đình các em nhé. Nào, các bạn nêu thêm cho cô một số cái tên nào.
The rate of interest.
Okay, interest rate.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And more. Now think about some. Yes.
Tax.
Okay. Tax rate. And
Expected future income.
Expected future income.
Yes.
Okay. Expected futures. Yes, income. And more like in terms of the family, some characteristic of the family. For example, give some name. Can you give me some name more? Some factors. I mean, like for example, like some characteristic of households could affect the consumption of household.
The number of the households, as the number of the people in a household.
Okay, number of the member. Okay, or the members of the family, of the household, right? Yeah, and any. Okay, for example, like the location or living place, right? For example, when you live in the cities, you have to spend more than when you live in countryside, something like this. Okay, and many so on, for example. So here you already named some factors that can affect the consumption of households according to the social knowledge, right? But you have to understand that when you decide to set up an econometrics model, decide to use which factors you should include in the model. So you need to read a lot of theories. For example, here I ask you, for example, we want to analyze the factor affecting GDP growth of countries, right? So you already study these things in macroeconomics. And so that means based on the theories, so you can you can highlight or you can mention some factors. It's not like you write it's not like you just put any variables you want. No, you need to have some base, like background, theoretical background to include, to choose the variables in the model. So for example, here you name many variables here that can affect consumption. In fact, these things or these factors already mentioned in the theories. So how we can get the theories? Normally, we have to search on the theory you can get from the papers, research paper that already published in the journal, or you get the theories in the textbook. Okay, all this kind of thing I will talk to you later in more details when I tell you how you can write assignment and how you can write a research paper. It's the point that when you select any, when you decide to include any factor, any variable in the model, you need to have like the base or the theoretical backgrounds to select the data, to select the variable. Okay, it's not like I like that though. You need to base on theoretical background. And so now we are talking about the come back here. So that means besides income, there's many other factors that can affect the consumption of households, as you just mentioned here, right? Okay, so all these factors will be included in factor U here. So you can see in econometrics model, we have factor U here. So U here is error term or disturbance, and U represents factors that are not income but can affect consumption of households. Như vậy U đây, cái yếu tố U đây người ta gọi là sai số hoặc là nhiễu nhá. Nhiễu trong sách giáo khoa đôi khi người ta dùng error term, đôi khi người ta dùng là disturbance. Và cái nhiễu này là chứa tất cả những yếu tố có ảnh hưởng đến biến phụ thuộc nhưng không được đưa vào mô hình. Đấy, vì một số cái nguyên nhân nhất định. Chợ. So here I said to you here in the story, the choice of variable to include in the model based on economic theories and available data. Đấy. Như vậy để quyết định cái biến số nào đưa vào mô hình thì các em phải có cái khung lý thuyết. Thế nên thông thường ví dụ các em về sau các em sẽ phải viết khóa luận tốt nghiệp, đúng không? Khóa luận tốt nghiệp là cái bài nghiên cứu gọi là quan trọng nhất để kết thúc cái việc học đại học, đúng không? Thì các em chắc chắn là sẽ hoặc là các em trong quá trình học các em có được học cái môn gọi là phương pháp nghiên cứu ấy, không biết các em được học hay không, thì các em sẽ hiểu rằng là làm sao để có thể xác định được các biến số đưa vào mô hình. Đấy, nó phụ thuộc vào cái khung lý thuyết và cái sự sẵn có của số liệu. Đó. Ví dụ khung lý thuyết nói rằng là ví dụ như những yếu tố ảnh hưởng tăng trưởng GDP, ví dụ như là inflation rate chẳng hạn, đúng không? Thế nhưng mà dữ liệu không có, chúng ta không thu thập được dữ liệu, thế thì đánh không thể cho cái đó vào mô hình được, cho biến số đấy vào mô hình được. Yeah. So the point start here. So that means the error term, these factors always exist, and when we estimate the beta 0 or beta 1 here, we need to consider the existence of error term and disturbance. So that's why in the next lectures, when we will study many assumptions related to the error term. Okay, so that we can, given on that assumption, we can estimate the model. Okay. And here are the reasons, some main reasons for the existence of error term. The first reason is that the researchers cannot know all the factors that affect dependence variable. Okay, that means we cannot know all the factors, or we cannot name all the factors that can affect dependence variable. So dependence variable here could be like a GDP growth, could be of the countries, a province. It could be like the behaviors, the consumer. Can be anything. That means when we have to list all the factors that can affect the dependent variable, so we cannot list all, because some factor we cannot name, or some factor we cannot find good measurements. Okay. And the second reason is that if in the case we know like one factors, we know very sure that for sure that for example, we know for sure that the number of the living place of a family or a household could affect the consumption expenditures of the family. But we cannot get data. We cannot get data of that factors. So we cannot include them in the model. Here you have to imagine that normally when we collect when we work with the data, we have to collect the data from, we cannot do the survey by ourselves. So we have to take the data from other sources, like that have a function in doing survey. Okay, and that means we have to depend on the other sources. For example, in Vietnam, when you want to collect data, normally you go to the website of the General Statistics Office, Tổng cục Thống kê GSO. And sometimes some data you have to buy. Okay, some data are open source, so we can get for free. Yeah. So it's a point that means if we know for sure that this factor could affect the dependent variable, but because we cannot get data, so we cannot include them in the model. And the third reason is sometimes it's too complicated if we include all the variables in the model. We know that, for example, talking about the GDP growth, there are many factors could affect the GDP growth, but there are some important that have a strong effect. There are some factors that have a weak effect on GDP growth. So normally when we analyze, we don't include everything. We don't include all the variables because it's too complicated for analysis. And normally we just focus on some important factors. Okay. So with these reasons, so we can see that error term always exists. So that's why when we set up an econometrics model, or when we estimate an econometrics model, we need to consider the existence of the error term. Okay, of the error term. And step 4, data collection. Step 4, data collection. Chúng ta break một chút các em nhé. Chúng ta nghỉ một chút đi. Chúng ta nghỉ tầm 15 phút nhé. 15 phút nhé.